Hello everyone, today we're going to look at how to make this beautiful desert landscape in Adobe Illustrator. So let's get started right away. Number one, you should have this handout from the X Drive. It might be labeled slightly differently, but this is going to take you through step by step. And even though you are watching this video, it is good to have this around because there are some color codes that would be great to copy and paste into the file. So let's start at the very beginning. We're going to make a new document in Illustrator. So we go to File, New. Remember as well that you are welcome to fast forward to any part of the video that you require. You don't need to watch everything. Keep the closed captions on and go to wherever you need to. So if you don't have any presets, which you probably won't, you can head over to Art and Illustration, and then you can set up. We're going to work in pixels. Remember, pixels is just a unit of measurement. This is all still vector. And we're going to have our document be 1000 pixels by 1500. So we're going for portrait, a nice tall artboard, and we can click create. There we are. Now the color mode was already set to RGB, so we are good there. But something that I might have forgotten to do actually, I'm going to get rid of this. Let's go to File, New, let's go again. New Documents, RGB color mode, but we also want to make sure that we have a high resolution once again. So we need to go to More Settings, and here we go. So for raster effects, change it to high, 300 ppi. Now we can hit Create Document. Excellent. Alrighty, so the first step in creating our wonderful work, we have done step 1, now on to step 2. We're going to use our rectangle tool, shortcut is M, and you're just going to draw from corner to corner. There we go. Now a reminder as well, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo this, that if you hit Command U, you can activate your snap guides. So now those magenta lines are coming up telling me exactly where the corner is. Click and drag. Excellent. I can see in the layers panel over here that with drawing a rectangle, I have now created my first layer, and I'm going to name it background. Alrighty. So what we're going to do now is we are going to add a gradient to this. So actually what we can do, our item is selected. We can see the boundary box and the active anchors. Here at the bottom we have our options for fill. We have color, a gradient, or none. Right now it's set to white, but let's change it to a gradient, and that automatically fills it for us, and it automatically opens up our gradient panel. Now we want to change our gradients to go from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, so the gradient goes up and down instead of side to side. I just hit enter to activate it. And now we are going to add our colors. So right now this is only made up of 2 colors, white and black, but we want 4 according to our demo over here. So if you take your mouse and hover right underneath the gradient slider, hover until you see this white arrow with a plus sign, and you can click to add 2 more sliders. All right, and now what we'll do is we will double click on our first slider here, and it opens up this panel for us. All right, now what we need to do is be able to enter in these color codes for us, these color codes over here. Anything with a number sign is a color code. So back over here, double click. Now the reason why black or white or gray doesn't have color codes is because they're not colors yet. So we're just going to go over here, we're going to change it to a color just to kind of activate it. Go back to this color palette, and now the codes are available. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to double click this sequence, I'm going to hit Command C to copy it, and now I'm going to hit Command V to fill it in to this space. Now when I hit enter, I'll see that first color appear. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to copy the second number. I'm going to double click on the second slider. I'm going to highlight and then Command V to paste the number, hit enter to make the color appear. Grab the number again, Command C, double click the slider, highlight, Command V, enter, and finally double click, Command C, back over here, double click the slider, and this is one that's black, so we'll just swap it, and Command V, enter. All right, and now we're just going to adjust our sliders to match more so what we see over here. So we're going to pull this dark one out from the edge a bit, and we'll pull this one in more, and we'll bring this one in a bit as well. Here we go. Move that back a little bit. You can play around. As you can tell, when you move them around, it adjusts when the colors start to really interact. And these little sliders above as well, if you click on one, whoop, let me move that back. If you click on one of them and it becomes white, then you're able to adjust the transition between just the two colors that it's in the middle of. But that's all things you can play around with later. So I am happy with that. All right, now on to step number 3. We're going to create a new layer. So we're in our layers panel now over here, and we're going to create a new layer just like we did in Photoshop. Wonderful. All right, now make sure that this layer is selected. We're going to use our pen tool, and what you're going to do is I would put your fill to none, and then, oh, now that happened because the background was still selected when I did that. So I'm going to hit Command Z. I'm going to use my selection tool, remember shortcut V, just to click off so that the square is no longer selected. Now with layer 2 highlighted in the layers panel, I'm just going to set my fill to none, and I'm going to keep my stroke set to black. Use my pen tool. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag across the width of the artboard here to create kind of mountainous shape. So as in the demo here, it starts kind of in between the yellow and the orange. And remember, you're just going to click and drag to make kind of organic looking shapes for mountains. Try to vary it a bit to make it a bit more naturalistic. And you want to start on the outside of the actual artboard and be in the gray area. We want this spillover to happen. All right. Now what we will do is we are going to change the fill of this. Now with the eyedropper tool, which is shortcut I, you are able to just select the gradient, and what that will do is choose the entire gradient. But we don't want that, so I'm going to hit Command Z. And what's actually very helpful is if you hold Shift and use the eyedropper, you're able to directly select just the one color, which can be very handy. But I'm going to stick with the color codes that we have right now. And I am going to go on to step number 4. So I'm going to open up my gradient panel, and we're going to apply this gradient to the mountain for now. But we have a bunch of sliders that we don't need. So if you just click and drag the slider off of the slider bar, that gets rid of it. There we go. We only need 2 sliders. So now over here we have color codes that we can use for these mountains. So I'm going to copy this again and make sure that your angle is set to 90 again. All right, now our lighter color gets this code, and our darker color gets this code. Remember, I'm just copy and pasting. Control, or rather Command C, Command V. All right. Now we're going to play with the sliders a little bit. We only want the dark parts of the gradient to be just cresting along the top of the hill. So I'm going to move these all the way. See, that's too harsh because now this little slider is so close to the orange, so we're going to move that back to the middle. There we go. That's nice. I'm happy with that. Remember as well that you can use your direct selection tool. If you click on one of the anchors and then click and pull, you're able to adjust things. You are also able to convert them to a point. So if I have this anchor selected, I can choose convert to point and it'll turn it into a sharp angle for me. Or I can also hit convert to smooth and it'll do that for me as well. So again, I'll just show you, I'll zoom in. I have this anchor selected, I clicked on it. You can convert it to a sharp point or you can convert it back to a curve. So there's that option there that we hadn't explored before. And that's step number 4 for us. All right, now let's move on to step number 5. We are going to draw another row of organic looking mountains, and we can continue to do this on layer 2 as well. Make sure your drawing mode is set to normal so the next mountain, the next row of mountains that we draw does go on top of the one that we just completed. So again, start beyond the actual artboard. Go ahead and just build mountains. It's okay to have some jagged edges. No pressure. And we box it all the way along the outside. There we go. All right, now there's already a gradient in here because the fill was set to the same parameters as last time, but let's update with some new colors. So we want to get progressively darker the closer the mountains get to us. And here we have some more numbers. We can copy, go over here, double click our slider, highlight and paste. Another one over here, copy, double click our slider, highlight and paste, enter. Good, now something that I just realized is that the stroke for both of these mountains is set to black. We don't want that. Actually, we don't want it for any of these. So I'm going to highlight all of the layers just by clicking and dragging with my selection tool. And I'm going to select my stroke and I'm going to hit none. And that gets rid of the outline for us. All right. Now back to these mountains. Let's make sure in our gradient tool with the fill that once again the dark part is only cresting along the top, which it is, and that's perfect. Now we're going to do this again. We're going to grab our pen tool and we are going to do another range, just going along. And don't have your mountains go up and across any pre-existing ones. I want you guys to keep the line distinctly underneath the pre-existing ones, and I'll show you why in a bit. Yeah, let's wrap that around. Good, and now we can adjust the fill again with these two numbers. The first number is always the lighter one. Double click the slider, highlight, paste, double click, copy, double click, highlight, paste. Good, and this one we can move around a little bit. I want the dark part to be a little more noticeable. Awesome, and one more row of gradient hills for us. So we'll grab the pen tool again, and we'll let this one be a little more subdued. Again, make sure that you are closing the shape along the outside of that edge of the artboard. And our final numbers, double click, copy, double click, highlight, paste, enter, double click, whoops, double click, Command C, double click, highlight, Command V, enter. All right, and we'll have this dark part hover there a bit. One more, and then I'll drag this down. Yeah, that's nice. Alrighty, so now we have 4 rows of mountains, and we're going to draw one more shape. But this next shape, I'm just clicking off so that none of my items are selected right now with the selection tool. This last shape is going to be just a regular fill, not a gradient. So I'm going to select this color option here. Grab my pen tool, and then we're going to draw a fairly flat, maybe kind of rolling foreground. And then close off the shape again. We want a really dark color for this because it is the closest thing to us. And let's take this number here, copy it, and then if you double click the fill, you have an area to put in the code as well. And paste, enter. It's just a bit darker than what we had. Awesome. All right, that's all the way down to step number 7. Wonderful. All right, so this is now, step number 8 is now why I didn't want any of the mountains to overlap. What we're going to do is we're going to choose our second, third, and fourth row of hills. And just to kind of soften their appearance a bit, we're going to drop the opacity down to 70%. 70, good. Just to make it a bit easier on the eyes with the transition. Now the reason why I didn't want any of these to overlap, I'll show you. If I select this hill, I'll use my up arrow to move it. Now that there is an opacity being affected, we can't have the mountains distinctly overlapping because now it looks like the mountains are see-through. So we're going to put that right back down where it belongs. And I'm just using the arrow keys on the keyboard. And again, just click off so you're not selecting anything at the time. Now it's time to add the sun. And we know that we can use the ellipse tool, and the shortcut is L. And as you guys are well aware by now, we can make a perfect circle by holding Shift and Alt, clicking and dragging. Lovely. So this does have a gradient fill right now, and that's all right because that's what we need. But if we open up our gradient panel, we need to make some changes. So for the sun, we're not going to have a linear gradient. We're going to change it to radial. And now we're going to change the color because that is not working for us. We're going to make them more of yellows and oranges. So again, we're going to come over here and steal the color codes. And double click again, copy, double click, and paste. There, now with the sliders, you do want to have some fun. I would suggest putting the color sliders at opposite ends. And then with the middle slider, dragging it over so that the yellow is the more dominant color and the orange is more so along the edges. Beautiful. All right, now what we're going to do is we are going to move the sun behind the mountains. If I click and drag it down with my selection tool, we see that it's overlapping the mountains. So if we go to our layers panel right here, I'm actually going to make a new layer, and I'm going to label it Sky. And what I'll do is I'm going to put the moon in that layer, and then move this whole layer underneath the mountains, which then effectively puts the sun just out of reach. There we go. All right, the next step is we want to give it a bit of a glow. So the effects icon from Photoshop is not here anymore, but if we use our selection tool to click on our sun, we go to Effect, and under Illustrator Effects, we're going to go to Stylize. Then we're going to go to Outer Glow. And with that, we're going to change this color to the color provided over here. And the color is, under step 11, it's FF9 100, and we can click Enter. It's a bit of an orange glow. We're going to change the mode to color dodge. You guys might remember these from your blending modes in Photoshop. We're going to have the opacity at 100% because we do want it to be nice and bright. And we're going to change the blur, so how far out the glow dissipates, to 100 pixels as well. And when you click OK, you can take a look here. It's going to be applied. There we go. So you can tell it's applied because if I move the sun now, we can see that the glow follows it as well. So we'll bring this back down here. Awesome. Now scrolling down to step number 12, where we are now going to draw our moon, which we have some experience with from when we explored the Shape Builder tool. So again, we will use our ellipse, and we are going to hold down Shift and Alt and draw 2 circles. Let's set it so that the fill is actually white. Very good. And then we know that if we hold down Alt, when we have our selection tool activated, we'll get the double arrow and we will be able to create this overlap. Now I'm going to select both of these shapes, and I've actually become a really big fan of the Shape Builder tool. So I'm going to go over here, and then holding down Alt, I'm going to get rid of everything that I don't need. There's my crescent shape. I'm going to go to Effect, going to go to outer glow. And now we're still going to have the same color, but we're going to drop the blur to 20. And then we're going to click OK. And we get a nice little warm glow there. And with my selection tool, maybe I'll just hover along the outside, tilt it a bit more. Lovely. All right, now it's time to add some stars. We're already done the steps 12 and 13. Now we're on to the final touches. So I'm going to zoom in a lot. I'm going to scroll up to the darker areas here. Zoomed in very closely. I'm going to draw a little circle. Holding Shift and Alt. Here we go. Now I'm going to go to Effect. Underneath Illustrator, I'm going to go to Distort and Transform, and then Pucker and Bloat. Now we want it to pucker, so in this text box here, we're going to type in -60 and hit Enter, and we get that pucker effect. And now I'm going to reduce the size of the star by holding Shift and dragging in the corners, make it super tiny. Good. Now with this super tiny star selected, I'm going to go to my symbols panel over here. Looks like the clubs. And I'm going to create new symbol. I'm going to name it star. Click OK. And now I'm just going to delete this one. I don't need it anymore. This was just a template. All right, now all the way to step 16. Now I'm going to zoom back out. And I'm going to use a tool called the symbol sprayer. It looks like a little spray can over here. And if I use my square brackets to adjust the size, what I'm going to be doing is clicking and dragging. You see my stars selected over here. Clicking and dragging to add a bunch of stars. I'm not letting go. I'm clicking a couple times just to spread things out a bit. Feel free to have some stars kind of enter the lighter area as well, but keep it kind of heavy here. And starry night. Try to avoid any areas that look like a deliberate line. I try to fill in the gaps a bit to make it a bit more natural. Awesome. All right, now that we've laid out the stars, we can right-click on the symbol sprayer over here, and we are going to use the symbol sizer tool. And now what this will do is if I click and drag, see how the stars got bigger? We don't want that, so we're going to hit Command Z. We want the stars to get smaller. So we're going to hold Alt, and then as we click and drag, we can see them all getting slightly smaller. Oh, that was bigger because I wasn't holding Alt, so undo. Let's hold Alt again, and just make things a little smaller, more dainty. Good, and now finally, we're going to go over back to where we were. We're going to use the symbol screener tool. This essentially just helps us to make kind of an organic transparency to these stars because we know they're not all the same brightness. So I'm going to use the square bracket to decrease my brush size a bit. I'll just randomly click to take away some of the vibrancy. There we go. And then all of these symbols, they are kind of selected as a group. Now I'm going to go up here to opacity, see where we have the option symbol set. Go to opacity, and I'm going to drop it all the way down to 40. There we go, understated and beautiful. Now we are past step 19, on to the finishing touches. All right, now we are going to grab the blob brush. It's underneath the brush tool. All right, now I'm going to use my square brackets to pump up the brush size. You can see it slowly but surely growing. Awesome. I'm going to use my eyedropper to sample this silhouette color. And back to my brush tool. Blob brush, make sure it's a blob brush. And now on the gray, I'm going to draw a cactus. I'm just going to draw upwards. I didn't like that. Command Z. Let's try that again. If I hold shift, will it do a straight line? It will. All right, so I got a straight line for my cactus. And now I'll do those classic cacti arms. Good. Now let's check. All right, so right now I forgot to create a new layer, so my cactus is in my sky layer. We don't want that. So we are going to select the new layer option. I'm going to type cactus, and I'll click and drag my cactus in there. And we want the cactus to be on top of our mountain layer as well. All right, so with the selection tool, remember shortcut V, we are able to click and drag and put our cactus as part of the silhouette. A nice simple way to duplicate, we know, is to hold Alt, click and drag. We can hold Shift and resize to put one as though it looks like it's far away. Very good. And I think I'm going to draw another one as well. Maybe a bit thinner, a bit more organic. Make maybe the branches a little thinner as well. Third arm, use my selection tool to drag it in. Shift to make it smaller. Let me put a medium-sized one here. Awesome. And then I think with the brush tool, the blob brush rather, I'll make it really small. And then I'm just going to add a few grassy details. Just a little bit of grass. Little bit of grass. Nothing overly fancy. Don't be afraid to zoom in as well. What I want you guys to take note of is that when I paint onto this surface, the little grass details become extensions of this shape, which is why we drew the cactus on the gray area. Let's see if we can move this cactus up a bit. Very nice. So these cacti are still free agents, but this grass now is part of the entire thing because we painted with the brush right on this layer. We zoom on out. That looks pretty darn good. Now, truthfully, actually, if I go Command Z, I'm going to go back. That grass is awful thick. I'm going to go back in because it's going to bother me. And I'm going to make my brush super thin. And then do those details. Yeah, that's much better. Much better. Zoom on out. To your heart's content. Yeah, that looks a lot better than the chunky grass. Alrighty, and that completes your demo. Now don't worry about all this excess that's hanging over the edges because when we save this as a PDF, go to File. First of all, save your work. Make sure that you give it a name and put it on your desktop and save. And then once you've saved it as an Illustrator document, I want you guys to hit Shift Command S again to go save as, and we'll save it as a PDF. We'll click Save, Save PDF. I've opened up View PDF after saving, so it should pop up right away. Don't worry if those colors come out, it's just a lot of visual information, so it kind of color blocks first before solidifying itself. And there you have it, it trims the edges for you. So only anything that was on the artboard, which is this outline here that we put a rectangle around, that is what ends up in the final PDF. All right, well done everyone. Start thinking about the type of landscape that you would like to create for your own artwork.